All right, Shalom, Shalom, Israel, Shalom. This your brother Isaiah, man, featuring the brother Obadiah, also known as the Bible Prince. We're the brothers from the Hopeful Elect, coming at you with another Soul Food Sunday. Right. Today's topic is called training camp. Training camp. As you can see, the game is in the name. You'll know what this is going into as you listen on. But before we go any further, we want to give all praises, glory, and honor be unto the Most High God, Yahweh, right? Through, I guess you could say, in respects to the name of His only begotten Son, who we know as Yahweh Shah Hamashiach, who the world calls Jesus Christ, right? So, again, this is your brother Isaiah, and we want to come and bring you a lesson that's not necessarily long-winded and not necessarily something that you've never heard before, but something that could be very much needed during this time, during this season that we in. A lot of brothers and sisters across the globe. So before we move further, man, we're gonna get this thing rolling by playing the blowing of the shofar. Um, so like, I'm sharing my screen. Window. Let me know if y'all can hear this too on the screen. Let me know if y'all can hear this. Can you hear it?
Con.
So that was the blowing of the shofar, from the brothers of the Hopeful Elect. Oh, hold on, Salaki. Let me minus this tab real quick in the background. So let me close that tab out. Sorry, I had background noise going on. But like I said, man, today's topic, training camp. We finna go right into the scriptures. Sorry, Salakia, for the waiting, but let's go ahead and let's get the rolling. So the first scripture we got is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and we starting at verse number 24. And we're reading verse 24 and 25.
Con. Verse 24. You said Corinthians 9 and verse 20. 1 Corinthians 9 and 24?
Right. 1 Corinthians 9 and 24, starting at 24.
Okay. He said, know ye not that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize. So run that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperance in all things. Now they do it to be often a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible.
Right. Read that last verse 25 again. Now they do it to do what?
Read from the top.
Nah, read it from the middle part. You said now they do it to obtain.
Obtain, yeah. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible.
Right, man. So pretty much everyone is in the race, right? We're all running. But the command is to run to win, right? But what specific crown are you trying to win? Are you trying to win an incorruptible crown, or are you trying to win an corruptible crown? Right? That's the point of emphasis, right? Second thing that you want to highlight is it requires temperance. Like it says in verse 24, know you not that they which run a race run all, but one receiveth the prize, run that you may obtain. So we're looking to run a crown. We're looking to win a crown when we're running, but we're running that we may obtain. Why? Right? What is a key thing that you could point out from reading these two verses? Verse 25, and every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Temperate. You exercise self-control, right? It's all about the habits that you have, whether it be sleep, diet, and exercise, whatever type of habits that you have, right? Temperate in all things. It's a highlight, right? So the same thing, the same way people train their bodies to be in peak shape, the same way that people train their skills to be the best. That way, when you're competing against other athletes, that you could stand out the most. It's the same way we need to train our spiritual bodies, right? Our spiritual endurance. We need to have spiritual temperance. We need to learn how to have good spiritual habits, right? That will produce fruit that shows that we're striving for the mastery. We want to obtain an incorruptible crown, right? Because that's the third point. The prize that we're looking for is eternal, you know. I guess you could say, like, in the Olympics, I think that's the Olympics, that they give you a laurel wreath, something like that, when you win,
Yeah.
right? And guess what happens to that wreath over time? It fades away, right? We don't want that. We want something that's never going to fade, such as the laws, the statutes, the commandments of the Lord, right? We want that crown because once he puts those laws in our heart, they're going to be forever. The kingdom will be forever. And that's something that you should want to obtain, right? So we train because we're in a real race for an eternal prize, right? Now, let's break down kind of sort of how we train. So the how. Training for endurance is the first thing. Anytime you're an athlete, right? And I'm a coach, the first thing I always focus on when it comes to coaching my team is building up your endurance. You got to be in shape. If you're not in shape, you're going to give out fast. You give out fast, you're not going to be able to endure, right? So the first thing we got to look at is endurance. Now, again, we're talking about physical things, but think about it in the spiritual sense. Think about building up your spiritual endurance, right? To keep going when the race gets long and when it gets difficult. So let's go to the book of Hebrews, chapter 12, and we're going to read verse 1 and 2. Hebrews 12, 1 and 2.
Cause I had a good example. I know back in high school when we were running track, it was a brother. Shout out to the brother KD, man. I ain't talked to that brother in a minute, but I forgot what he ran. I think it was the 400. I want to say, I could be wrong, but he started off sprinting. You know, he started off sprinting in front of everybody, and he was in the front. You know, he had a big lead, but he got tired. You know, I think his plan was to try to sprint and get as far as he can in front of everybody, you know, so they wouldn't catch him. But he kind of gassed out, and then the people that paced themselves ended up passing him, and he kind of came in a little bit last. And like, that's a perfect example of what you're saying, man. You got to have endurance, man. You can't, you know, you can't give all your full speed in the beginning, then you gas out. You know, you got to have endurance and you know, time everything out.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, because I did the same thing my freshman year of high school, right? I'm practicing with the varsity now, so I'm feeling myself, man. And I said, you know, I got to separate myself from everybody. I want to stand out. So we was conditioning one day, and I jetted off right to the front of the line. Next thing you know, everybody's passing me, right? Why? Because I got tired. I gave out, you know. We had to do so we was running on the baseball field that day, and we was touching, you know, foul pole to foul pole. We was running foul pole to foul pole. And if you don't know how that baseball conditioning is, man, that baseball conditioning gets crazy. But again, we was playing, this was football season. So football season, we running on the baseball field today, and that outfield gets kind of long when you're going from foul pole to foul pole. Nonetheless, I jetted out, man. I was in front of everybody, and all the seniors and all the upperclassmen, they was hyping me up. They was like, okay, young. They was like, okay, freshman. They're like, okay, big fresh. Put in that work. I touched that foul pole. Then I started going back halfway through. I said, boy, if I keep running this hard, I'm gonna pass out. So I slowed down because I got tired, bro. I got tired. I didn't have no more to push. And next thing you know, everybody's passing me, right?
Yeah.
So it's a situation like the tortoise and the hare, right? Anytime you're training for something, it's not about being the first one, right? It's about being the one that lasts the longest, right? Because again, Matthew 24, we'll read that later, but let's read this right here in Hebrews 12, 1 and 2.
Hebrews 12, chapter 1 and verse 2. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us.
Read verse 2. Yeah,
read as it's read.
Read as it's written.
Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God.
Right. So think about something we got to highlight here. Lay aside every weight. An athlete, most athletes you will see, they kind of wear light clothing, So you got to kind of look at, what's the weights in our lives, right? And not necessarily sin, but distractions that could slow you down, right? Entertainment, social media, relationships, you still hanging around friends that you shouldn't be hanging around. You got to consider those weights, right? I'm not necessarily saying sin, but you can also include the sin. If you know you got secret sins that you're dealing with, you got to get rid of them. You got to deal with those things and get rid of them. You got to acknowledge that, hey, I've been going off, and you got to, again, do away with those things. Why? Because those can hold you down, right? Those could set you back. You have to lay aside those weights in your life that's causing you to stumble. Oh, man, you getting into an argument with your husband. Oh, you get into an argument with your wife, right? Now y'all mad at each other, not talking to each other for days on end. Sometimes that could be a weight that you just got to let go of, because at the end of the day, it's not about, again, it's not about necessarily being, let me say this without sounding like I'm going to justify sin, right? So it's not necessarily about not having ever done wrong. It's not necessarily about not having ever had on heavy weights or dealing with anything. I'm not talking to, it's not just going to be those who never sin in their life who can endure the kingdom, right? The reason we have Christ, the reason Christ came, and the reason he died, and the reason we have an opportunity to obtain the kingdom is because of the sacrifice that he made. And so through the sacrifice of Christ, now we have to realize those things that could hold us back and separate us from that sacrifice, we have to put to the side, right? Again, it's not necessarily a never have done wrong, never sinned before doctrine. It's a doctrine of training yourself to be the best version of you, regardless of whatever point you started at in life, because again, you got football players in college right now that's 30 years old, 50 years old, right? Hey, they could have been terrible players in their young years when a lot of people are in college and playing. They could have been terrible. They could have had bad diets, bad workout habits, right? But as time grew longer, right? As time went on, they developed the right habits to be able to be athletes and compete at high levels. So now they're competing at a high level. Some may say, well, y'all too old to be doing that. But again, it's never too old to train yourself to be better. It's never too old to push yourself. And you're never too old to lay aside those weights that could be holding you down in life. Because once you lay them down, you'll realize how young you may feel, how much ability you have to do that thing, So again, get rid of the dead weight, right? Secondly, you got to run with patience, right? Dang, I should have pulled up the blue letter for this, right? But the Greek word, I think in verse 1 for patience is hupomone, something like that, right? But it's meaning endurance, perseverance, steadfast under challenge, right? You got to run with patience, knowing that, again, like the brother said, he had a teammate that got out to a fast start, and in his mind, he was running to get so far ahead that nobody could catch him. But you got to think, sometimes in life, when you live fast, you're going to die fast, right? And I mean that to say a lot of those things that you do to get that fast money, to obtain all this wealth over a short period of time, they could catch up with you. All the sins that you committed, hey, they could catch up with you, right? So let's not be running as if, again, it's about the first person, because it's never about the first person, right? It's always about the one who endures until the end. And that's what training yourself looks like. Training yourself to endure to the end. That's why, again, you have to run with patience. And people used to get on me because when I played football, man, I was a bigger dude. One thing I would never do, and even till this day, I will never let nobody, is make me run more than what my body feels like it's able to, right? Now, granted, there is a factor of knowing how to and when to push yourself, right? But I'm always considering myself like a patient runner. Like, I never just after that incident, I never really got out to a fast start anymore. I kind of just paced myself and I kind of cruised and I ran at my speed. And I don't really try to run and compete with nobody else, because at the end of the day, it's not about their speed and it's not about competing with them. It's about competing with myself and pushing myself to the I guess you could say to the max, right? But again, all of that is attributed to running with patience, knowing that it's not about the first, it's about enduring, right? You got to be steadfast. You got to be able to run miles. Like the brother Azrael and the brothers Danal, they with us in spirit right now. But the brother Azrael, man, he's a stickler for doing these hour-long runs, right? Hour and a half long runs, you know. The thing is that's the type of pace that a lot of us need to kind of have in the spiritual sense. We need to be ready to run for the long ride, you know. We can't be sitting up here thinking that we just gonna do 30 minutes of cardio and that's it. 5 minutes of cardio and that's it. Nah, sometimes you need to go on a long journey, right? Sometimes you got to run with patience because again, you try to be done fast, and then everything that you, I guess you say you got ahead of is gonna catch back up with you. So just make sure again that you're running this race with patience, right?
And I know, Salaki King, I know when I had first came into this walk, just me finding out about the knowledge of me being an Israelite and keeping these laws and commandments, I thought it was gonna be sweet. You know, 'cause I was young when I found out. I think I was in high school, like my sophomore year in high school, when I found out about the truth. So I came into this thing like, okay, yeah, I'm an Israelite. Yeah, we're God's chosen people. Christ is a black man. I'm thinking it's just gonna be a cakewalk. But then, you know, the temptation came and the affliction came. It's like, dang, that's why I wasn't expecting that. I didn't prepare myself for that. I was just so in the truth and thinking, I know these things now, it's going to be easy, but that's not the case, man. When you come into the truth and wake up who you is and come to the knowledge of who you are, that's when the fight starts, man. That's when that battle begins. And that's when, you know, that affliction and stuff come and you start getting tried because you now know who you are. But you got it, King.
Khan, you know, sometimes, man, you just got to settle down, you know. When you running like a 2 mile, and if you run track and field, you doing the 2 mile or you doing the 800, right? The 2 mile would be the 3,200 meter, right? But if you doing the mile, right, which is the 1,600 meter, or you doing the 800, which is the 800 meter run, right? A lot of times what you see is people, they get out to, they get that quick little burst and then they go into like a rhythm where they just hitting the stride, right? Why? Because they're being patient. They know it's not about necessarily being the again, let me rephrase that. In track and field, in a physical sense, yes, it is about being first. But a lot of times the way you win that race is by running with patience. And that's what a lot of people do when they run track and field. You see them 4x1 runners, those are sprints, right? They got to be out the gate fast. They got to know when to hit it, and they got to know when to, I guess you could say, downshift when they finna pass that baton, right? But when you talking about your distance runners, you know, I don't know really too many distance runners in life, but I would say this: distance runners know when and when not to hit that gear to turn it on, but then they know when to shut it back down. Why? Because when you running long distances, it's about pacing yourself, running with that patience, not necessarily getting too antsy, not necessarily being eager to just be the fastest one through, right? In the spiritual sense. But in the last point of this Hebrews 12, 1 and 2 is just, you know, looking at Christ, man. You know, he's our ultimate example of endurance, right? Who he endured all his pain and suffering, right? And really took it with joy set before him. Now, granted, he did pray and ask the Father to let this cup pass from him, right? If it be so, but nonetheless, he still did what he had to do because at the end of the day, he had, I guess you could say, he had a journey that the Father sent him on, right? So he had to be built up and trained for this journey, right? Don't think that Christ just, I'm not going to say he didn't have it all together, but what I am going to say is he even had to learn and go sit at the feet of those in the synagogue to learn, right? So we have to do the same thing with us and ourselves. We have to build ourselves up to be more like Christ. And you can use the example of Christ to build yourself up, right? Go ahead, Obadiah.
I was gonna say too, man. Before he even started his, you know, his ministry for real, that's when he had hopped on that fast for 30 days and 30 nights. So he
Right.
even prepared himself, for the mission and journey that the Most High had for him. So how much more us preparing ourselves and getting ourselves built up for the mission that he got for us?
Right. I mean, because at the end of the day, man, what we talking about is training yourself to be the best version of you when the fight grows on. So the brother Azrael did a lesson on Friday, just talking about, being bold, standing firm, right? In the midst of the fight, when you in the ring. What the video that he used to kind of give people an example is the movie Creed, right? And how even life, it refers to boxing. When you're in the ring, you may get hit, you may get knocked down, but you got to get back up. Having that type of resilience, having that type of determination to win this fight, regardless of the person that's hitting you, right? So I wanted to use this lesson as an encouragement. In order for you to get to that point of being in the ring and fighting and hitting the canvas and getting back up, you got to train yourself to get to that point, right? You got to train yourself to be ready, to be willing and ready to even get hit, because anybody could give a lick, but how much more can you take one? How much more can you take a lick and get back up? Because you could be a hard hitter, but if you got a weak chin, all it takes is one time somebody to catch you, and then you out like a light, So you got to be strong. You got to endure, because it's not about, again, it's not about being the first. It's about being the one who can endure, right? Let me get this precept in Ecclesiasticus, right? And let's start at verse number 1, right? Let's read this in Sirach chapter 2 and starting at verse number 1, and we're going to read through 6.
Sirach chapter 2 and verse 1. My son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation. Set thy heart aright and constantly endure, and make not haste in the time of trouble.
Right. Let me stop you right there real quick.
Con.
The first 2 verses alone, like, this is probably my favorite passage to read in all the Bible. And I say that about a lot of passages. So don't take this as in, if you bring this up, that's undoubtedly my favorite one, because there's so many gems throughout the scriptures. But what I will say is that, man, Sirach 2 and 1 and 2 is very, very, very pivotal to understanding why it's important to train yourself, right? Even the Bible is giving you wisdom to be ready, right? For anything. The only way you can really serve the Lord is to train yourself to be in situations. Well, let me rephrase it. The only way you can really serve the Lord is through training yourself, because you are going to be in situations that will test your faith. You are going to be in situations that will cause you to rethink if this is the walk that you really want to or should be on. There's been many times that people have questioned themselves and questioned, is this the walk that God wants for me? Right? Because again, when you start trying to live a set apart lifestyle, you start following the commandments, you start honoring the Sabbath, all hell can break loose in your life. And that's another thing too. When you're training, never think of what you want to obtain as something that's either A, easy to obtain, or B, it's always going to be all good all the time. Right? And I'm saying that to say, because a lot of people like to sell the truth. A lot of people like to sell people on the good things of the truth, almost like a salesman like to sell you on the good things of their product, their whatever they're trying to get you to buy, right? But they don't want to read you the side effects. Even in commercials, right? They'll have commercials for prescription drugs to help you with headaches and stuff, and it'll say it'll clean you up and it'll do this and it'll do that. But then towards the end of the commercial, they start reading the side effects, and it sounds like Twista is rapping, because there's so many things that can go wrong. And that's what a lot of people don't think about in life, especially being an Israelite, especially trying to live a set apart lifestyle. You have to be ready to serve the Lord, because you're going to be in situations that will cause you to rethink yourself. It will literally cause you to make you seem like you tripping, right? So that's why, even though we read 1 Corinthians 9:24 and 5 first, I really feel like this is really our staple precept right here, because you have to know that things are going to happen, right? When you're training for a fight, things are going to happen. When you're training for anything, you got to know that things are going to happen, right? But let's keep reading verse number 3.
Verse number 3. Cleave unto him and depart not away, that I may be increased at thy last end. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state.
Right, man. Again, being a patient runner. Be patient when you're changed to a lower state, right? You see people passing you by in the early parts of the race. Don't get discouraged, right? Because it's he that endures to the end, the same shall be saved, you know? And you got to keep running because you know that the crown you're trying to obtain is an incorruptible crown. And what that looks like in life is a lot of people may be passing you by. Materialism, or they having jobs, or they having money, you know? And I myself can get caught up in that sometimes. I'm not going to lie. You know, we live in the world. The Lord gave me eyes to see, you know, and that's why sometimes it's good to take a break from social media. That's why sometimes it's good to, you know, cleanse your timeline of things that those distractions, right? Laying aside the weight. You got to lay aside those weights that cause you to kind of forget your sole purpose, that kind of throw you off your game. That's why a lot of athletes, when they go into training camp, I'll speak for the NFL, right? And I can speak from my experience in college. So my experience in college, when I was a college athlete, during training camp, man, look, you got to kind of separate yourself from everybody that could potentially be on campus. All the football players, it was a thing where we did used to stay together, but some things changed going into my freshman year, but they redid it going back into my sophomore and junior year, right? But all the football teams stayed together. We was on campus before any girls, before any of your homeboys got to campus. Why? Because those would be distractions. Even in the NFL, they go to training camps and they don't go to their house in training camp. They go to a different city and they train. Why? Because even your wife can be a distraction. Just like Paul said. Paul said, even if you're married, he'd rather you be as if you were single. Because why? Your spouse can be a distraction. So what I'm getting at is that's why you have to be patient, because there are distractions that try to either get you to speed up or they may discourage you and then you'll slow further down. So you got to have patience, right? When you're changed to a lower state, some people may make haste to start getting rich, make haste to start getting money. Next thing you know, everything that they did to get it is going to catch up with them later on, like the brother's friend that he mentioned. Or some people just completely fall out the truth when they see people passing them on their left and their right, right? And that's what slowing down and stopping looks like. Oh, well, shoot, they passing me up, man. I might as well fall out this thing, you know? Ain't no point of trying to endure and keep the commandments. Let me go back into the world. Let me go make my money that way, you know? You got to have patience, right? At the end of the day, he that endured to the end, the same will be saved. Before we finish 5 and 6, let me pull up this, right? King, let me pull up this in the book of Psalms, right? Because we talking about people passing you on your left and right. Let me share this tab. Let me see. Let me see. No, 91. Oh, here you go, right here. Right. Psalms 91 and 7. Let's read this in Psalms 91 and 7.
Psalm chapter 91 and verse 7. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee.
Right, man. When you're running, you got to be a patient runner, because you're going to see people fall on your left and right, right? But you got to know that the Lord is going to be a shield unto you if you diligently seek him. If you diligently seek the Lord, he'll protect you, right? But again, you could be diligently seeking the Lord, begin to see people fall on your left and right, and just say, you know what, I'm out of here. That leads me to question, were you diligently seeking the Lord? And if you say you were, then that should be enough motivation for you to keep running this race. Because why? Going back to Sirach 2, right? What does he say? Let's read verse number 4 again.
Verse 4, whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state.
That should be enough motivation that you got to be patient when thou art changed to a lower state, right? Again, we're talking about training camp, training yourself to be the best man or woman in the spirit that you can be. And the way you do that is by knowing this race will get hard. This race will be challenging. but you have to run with a patient mindset, knowing that the Lord is going to increase you at that last end. Read verse number 3 one more time, Brother Obadiah.
Verse 3, cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end.
If you run with patience, the Lord will increase you at the end, right? Again, there's people in this life that run and all they want is money. All they want is the following, right? But there's people in this life that run and they really want the thing that the Lord wants for them, and that's the kingdom of heaven, eternal rest, eternal salvation, right? Something that you can never, I guess you could say, lose once you obtain it, but you have to obtain it. And it's not by saying, I believe, right? It's by the work that you put in every single day. That's what's going to separate you. Now let's finish this out in verse 5 and 6.
Verse 5 and 6, for gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Believe in him, and he will help thee. Order thy way aright, and trust in him.
Right. And matter of fact, can you read verse 7 too? Because that'd be a good closing as well on this.
It say, ye that fear the Lord, wait for his mercy, and go not aside, lest ye fall.
Right. Amen. Look, for gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity, right? Gold is tried in the fire. I want to go to somewhere real quick, right? Let's go to the book of Job 23 and verse 10, right? Because again, we always quote Job and people get frustrated with hearing about Job and Job and Job and Job and Job. But I'm not going to lie, I never get tired of talking about Job, you know, because if there's anybody that had a right to be kind of sad to an extent, it would be Job. You know, a lot of us go through life, we didn't lose our children. A lot of us go through life, we didn't have all the wealth and possessions that Job had, and we wasn't being faithful like Job was, right? And Job's fall, I guess you can call it that, right, was nothing more than a test from the Most High God, not necessarily for Job, but really to prove Satan that, hey, Job is a faithful servant, even though Satan already knew that. But then again, the Lord considered Job, and that's a true testament to how, I guess you could say, built up Job was, in a sense, where the Lord considers you to be chosen for this situation, right? Like Russell Westbrook has this thing called why not. A lot of people say, why not me? A lot of people say, why me? But Russell Westbrook says, well, why not? And that's the type of mindset we got to have. I mean, why not us? Why wouldn't you want the Lord to put you in that situation? What makes you think that you're better? Or what makes you think you're too high to be brought to a lower state? What makes you think you're too good to be in certain situations that you're going through, right? Again, this is a Lammy back off of the brother Azrael's lesson he did on Friday evening, but nonetheless, it's talking about building yourself up, training camp. You got to train yourself for situations that you probably never expected to be in, right? And I'm pretty sure Job didn't expect to be in this situation, but let's read this in Job 23 and 10.
Job chapter 23 and verse 10. But he knoweth the way that I take. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold.
Amen. Gold is tried in fire, right? Job said, hey, he know the way that I take, and when he had tried me, I shall come forth as gold. That's the type of mindset that you got to be in, right? But you got to train yourself to get to this point. I don't think you just wake up and just realize, oh, I'm the strongest Israelite ever. I'm the strongest spiritual person ever. No, it takes steps to get to that point, right? You got to refer to the scriptures to get counsel of how to handle situations, and that will help you get to this point. Go ahead, O. You on mute.
No, I was gonna you can go ahead, King. I was gonna pull. I know I was listening to this. I was listening to Lil Tony, man. He had a song. He had said something in the song. I wanted to say that go with your lesson. I'm gonna look for it real quick.
Come on. And man, Job's endurance wasn't based on his feelings, but on his faith in the Most High's purpose for him, right? His training really, man, and faithfulness, even prior to the trial, really prepared him to endure, because his wife even told him to curse God and die. But he responded and told her, hey, you speak as a foolish woman speak, right? Sometimes you got to know when to put people in their place when they say things that they shouldn't, especially when you're going through the trial, you're going through the fire. But again, you got to train yourself to get to that point, man. I mean, the only way you're going to know how to get off the canvas is if you train yourself getting knocked down. You got to know what it feels like to get knocked down, right? But some people, now let me put it like this. You don't have to necessarily get knocked down to know how to get back up, right? But you got to expect that you can get knocked down. That way, when you really do, one, it's not too much of a culture shock to you. A lot of people go through situations and they succumb to it because they thought it couldn't be them. One thing you should never do, somebody that believes in the Most High and his laws, statutes, and commandments, his judgments, his mercy, never think it can't be you. Never think it can be you. Again, never think it can't be you. Never think it can't be you, man. Anybody's capable of going through anything, right?
Yeah.
I talked to and I ain't gonna lie, I had a conversation with my wife the other day. We going through a little storm right now in our own right. But I told her, man, I said, man, never think it can't be you in a situation. Sometimes we get frustrated and we get mad and we get upset because we feel like, why is this happening? And then we start saying things, well, we know we could have prevented this and we could have prevented that. And you say, yeah, certain things maybe could have been different, but it's not, and we don't really dwell on what ifs, right? We dwell in the situation that we in and what the Lord gives us. And right. I said, we're not too good to be in certain situations, right? We're not too good to not be one of the people that we help out on the side of the street. Like, we're not too good and we're not above reproach. Nobody is. No Israelite man, woman, or child is. Nobody on the face of the earth is, Israelite or not. So you got to always remember that you got to prepare yourself for situations, right? Because when you're going through things, some people may not even know you're going through them because of how well you're handling it. And that's the type of mentality that I want to have, I want to be going through something and nobody even know that I'm going through something because I'm handling it well. I'm wearing a smile on my face, not necessarily because I'm faking it, but because I'm putting my trust in the Lord, right? So at the end of the day, man, again, it's about building yourself up in the spirit. You know that trials and tribulations are going to come, like we just read in the book of Sirach, Ecclesiasticus chapter 2. You know they're going to come. Be ready for it. And the way you be ready for it is you train yourself, right? You train your temperance, right? You train your patience, right? All of that is a part of endurance, all of that is a part of being able to endure. You got to be able to endure. If you're somebody that gasses out quick, you got to train yourself to be a little bit stronger, because this walk is not for the weak. It's not for those who looking to get a quick dollar. It's not for those who's looking to get some get rich quick scheme. Right. This is for those who want to take the slow grind, like Isaiah Thomas say. You have something, O?
Yeah, I was going. So the song, I'm gonna just read what he said. The song called "Answer My Prayers," and something he said stood out. He said, I'm gonna just read some of it. He said, "Have mercy on me, please hear my prayers, and slay off all my enemies, trying to ruin my reputation with all these accusations. But I know no revelation gonna come unless I get tribulation." And I was just replaying that part. He said it when he said, "But I know no revelation gonna come unless I get tribulation." And that stood out to me because, when we in this walk and we go through certain things, like, you're gonna have to have tribulation before testimonies are made. When you going through things, a lot of people have testimonies. They were made to tell other people.
Right.
So other people going through the same thing you going through, you can tell them, "Hey, I went through that and I overcame that." Man. But a revelation is going. Oh, go ahead, King. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. I was agreeing with you.
Oh, Khan. Yeah. So he said, "But I know no revelation gonna come unless I get tribulation." So we understand no revelation ain't gonna come until you get that tribulation, until you get tried through that fire. Right? The Most High, He trying us through the fire every single day in this walk. Brothers and sisters may be getting tried in different ways, but we are going through something. If a brother say he ain't going through nothing in his walk, he either not in the truth for real, or he lying, or she lying. Everybody going through something, rather we look at it as something big or small. We all going through something. We all got our battles that we have to fight, but we have to go through it, because that's the Most High. He's trying to see who gonna be the real soldiers, like who gonna be the ones I'm gonna put them through this, and they gonna really try to overcome it, or they gonna fold. So that's what the Most High really looking for. He looking to see who gonna fight and who gonna fold. And the ones who fight, those gonna be the ones that's accepted. But the ones that fold and give up and go back in the world and just quit, they're gonna be the ones that ain't gonna make it.
Right, man. You know, and that goes into knowing how to be resilient, right? So we talking about endurance, right? We talked about a lot, right? But the three main points you want to take away from this is building spiritual stamina, which is endurance, training for resilience, and knowing how to protect the lead, right? So let's go to resilience real quick. We're not going to spend too much time on the next 2 points, but that goes into being resilient. You know, resilience is really just pretty much, you know, withstanding the enemy's attacks, you know, and not to stay down when we fall. Again, that get up factor that the brother Azrael went into in his lesson. Let's go to 1 Peter 5:8 real quick. 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. PTR 5. I'm going to keep it wide. Con. So let's read this 1 Peter 5:8. You on mute.
1 Peter 5:8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour.
Right. And remember, man, we got to be sober and be vigilant, because Satan, hey, he's going to attack us, right? Now, how do we liken this? We liken this unto watching film, right? Anytime you finna play an opponent, anytime you got a match against an opponent, the one thing you're going to do is scout your opponent. How do you scout your opponent? You watch film. You watch film. So look, this is pregame film study. We must know the enemy's tactics, right? We must know his tactics. Let's go to read verse 9 and 10.
Come, verse 9 and 10. Whom resist steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. Keep reading.
Yeah, Con, keep reading.
To 10 to my bad. He said, but the God of all grace, who hath called us unto his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after that ye have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, settle you.
Right, man. Listen, verse 8 is pretty much like pregame film study, right? Knowing that your enemy is going to try you. So you got to know the tricks that the enemy likes to try you in. Again, you got to know you got to know your points of vulnerability, right? You got to know what makes you vulnerable in the spirit. And I'm not talking about what makes you emotionally vulnerable. Well, yeah, I am talking about what makes you emotionally vulnerable as well as spiritually vulnerable, which could be linked with emotional vulnerableness, right? But those points of vulnerability I'm speaking on is the points that Satan can attack you at. You got to know your weak point. You got to know your weak points, right? If you want to beat a man, you attack his weaknesses, right? But if you want to break a man, you attack his strengths, right? So if you know Satan's strongest, I guess you could say, you know, that if you know Satan's strength is to get you when you're in this moment or in this situation, or you looking at this or you watching that, right? Or you in this predicament, right? Then you got to know that, hey, he's going to hit me and he's going to do this and he thinks he's going to knock me down. But little does he know I'm already ready for it. I got a counterpunch waiting on him for that exact situation. That's how you break the enemy off your back. You know that his strength is to attack you when you're weak. So you got to point out your weaknesses and you got to build those weaknesses up. You got to separate yourself. Again, that goes back into laying aside that weight that we talked about early. You got to lay aside those distractions that try to bring you down. Go ahead, O.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, you gotta have a plan. You know, when it comes to Satan, man, you gotta be like, enough is enough, and you gotta come up with a plan on how to beat him, because this is a battle. You know, and if you look into any ancient battles of people just going to war, they planned out the plan of how they was gonna overcome this city or overcome this nation of people. They planned everything out. They just didn't go and get their swords and go and fight these people. No, I got a book called Art of War, man. I got to finish reading it, but it's a good book so far. And it just show you how important it is to plan things, man. Plan out your war before you don't just go in like a fool and go and just attack people that you ain't even plan out. If this situation happen, what we going to do? You know, we got to adjust. What we gonna do if this happen? You ain't talking about that with your soldiers. Like, what are you doing? And I remember when I was younger, man. You know, when you young, I know a lot of us when we was young, and I know even older people as well had this problem. You know, I ain't gonna say too much, but I'm just say nasty websites. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So especially when I was young, man, I was, like I said, I was learning the truth when I was in high school, and I was battling that type of spirit. And it came to a time where I got tired of falling, or I got tired of, you know, giving in. Then I'm praying to the Lord, Lord, forgive me, I won't do it again. Then the next day I do it again. I'm like, nah, it gotta come a time where, okay, I gotta figure out a game plan. You know, leave your phone in the room when you go in the bathroom. I start leaving my phone in the room. I start putting sticky notes of Bible verses on the wall, even on the toilet seat. You know what I'm saying? I was trying to find a plan and try every solution to see how can I overcome Satan. And that's how you got to be, man. You got to keep fighting. You got to keep trying to come up with every solution you can until you actually beat him. You can't give in. You're like, dang, okay, I can't do it. I done tried this. It ain't working. I give up. Maybe I ain't strong enough. You got to keep trying to figure out, what can I do to overcome this sin so I won't do it no more, man. And that's what we got to do. And everything we got to do that.
But, man, you know, it's all about, again, it's really all about making sure that, you know, it's all about making sure that you at your best, right? Let's read this real quick in 1 Corinthians 6 and 18.
1 Corinthians 6 and 18. Fornication, every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body.
Right, man. The Bible says flee fornication, right? So the brother was doing exactly what the big brother Paul advised people to do. When you're dealing with a certain demon, a certain spirit, you got to flee that thing. The way you flee it is by, like the brother said, you leave your phone in the bathroom. You put up sticky notes around the room, around the house. Hey, if you know that you're the type of brother to go on those nasty pages and watch stuff, you got to think about the times you're the most vulnerable when Satan puts that spirit, that urge and desire on you. Think about those times and know how to combat them, right? Because Satan's greatest strength is attacking your weakness. So the way that you break Satan is you attack his strength, and you make sure that you have no weaknesses through the spirit, right? What the brother said in the comment section, he said, the book of Joshua, right, displays great war planning and prudence, right? Because again, that's what Sirach 2 goes back to, prudence, being prudent. You got to know that these things are going to happen. It's foreseeing the future, right? So if you already know these things are going to happen, you know that at some point you're going to get hit with a jab and a left hook, right? Now you got to train your mind to know that this is what, like the brother Obadiah said, this is what we going to counter with, right? Even in football, you got some teams that, I'll put it like this. In football, you got some teams that they're just physically overwhelming, right? They got all the top athletes. They're just physically great. It's not necessarily their X's and O's, but it's their players that dominate, right? And then you got those teams who their players may not be the best players, but man, schematically, they're a tough team to go against on paper, right? So when you facing a certain opponent, even though you can face a team that has a great combination of both, right? But any opponent that you face, you're going to have some type of game plan to counter whatever they try to do. If you know you got a team full of great athletes, well, the way you 9 times out of 10 as a coach that I like to break great athletes down is I just like to get them, not let them get in the rhythm in a sense, right? So if you know you got a team full of fast guys on defense, they run sideline to sideline very well. We might hit them with some down here power, some trap plays, right? We might hit them with some screen passes, right? Why? Because we want to get the ball out of our quarterback hands, right? We want to be able to get our guys the ball in space, put our athletes up against their athletes, certain things like that, right? But again, all of that goes back to being prudent. And side note, man, Joshua was who I said, if I had to be in the army, if I had to think of somebody that had he was the greatest leader of an army, it would have been Joshua, man. You know, I've been saying that for years, bro, because when you go read the book of Joshua, man, you seen how he conquered the land. He really understood the art of war, like the brother Obadiah brought up. And that's how we have to be. We have to have a game plan to combat and counteract the devices that Satan tries to use to take us out, right? But going back to 1 Peter 5, right? We talked about, again, watching that film, being sober, being vigilant. And we got to resist, again, resilience. It's not really just about taking a hit either, you know? It's actively pushing back through prayer, scripture, and faith, man. You got to pray. You got to read. And you got to have faith that the Lord has given you the strength to overcome this thing. The Lord can and will see you through this thing, right? But also, like we read in verse 10, when it says establish, strengthen, settle you, right? You got to know that the Lord will give you the strength, right? Because why? God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind, right? So the goal of any trial is to really just establish, strengthen, and settle you. You know, it's just to make your faith stronger. And that's what a conversation with my wife the other day looked like. Sometimes, bro, you go through things in life to make your faith stronger. And this is one of those times. Like we talked with the sister at camp yesterday. Sometimes Christ did certain things, certain miracles that man can't perceive in today's time. But what is it going to do for you, right? It's supposed to increase your faith. It's supposed to make you think that you have the power to do the same exact thing. Why? Because even Christ said the same things that he did, we would do and even greater, right? So we talked about resilience, man. We talked about endurance. Now we got to talk about, you know, knowing how to protect the lead, you know, knowing how to protect the lead, right? Let's go to 1 Timothy 6 real quick. 1 Timothy 6. And let's read verse number 12. 1 Timothy 6, and let's go to verse number 12. Oh, Salakia. I'm sharing the wrong page. Salakia.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. There we go.
Right. God. 1 Timothy 6 and 12. Fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold on eternal life, whereunto thou art also called and has professed a good profession before many witnesses.
Right, man. An athlete, you know, an athlete doesn't stop playing hard when they're ahead, right? And that's the thing too. Sometimes we in life, we get up and then we stop praying. We get up and then we stop fasting. We get up, hey, we not reading as much as we used to. But why not? Why not keep doing those things? What's that precept? I think it's in Proverbs 6. Proverbs 6. Let me see real quick. Is it in Proverbs chapter 6? Let me see. Not.
Really,
Or is it Proverbs 30 and 6? Let me see. Where it says, "Give me neither poverty."
I think that's.
Let me see. Proverbs chapter 30. Nah, it's not 30 and 6.
30 and
Dang,
8.
man.
30 and 8.
Yeah. There we go. Right here. Here we go. 38 and 9. I read right over it. 30. Let's read this in Proverbs chapter 30, verses 8 and 9. Right.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 30 and verse 8 through 9. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain.
Right, man. Hey, look, give me neither poverty nor riches, right? Remove far from me vanity and lies. Feed me with food convenient for me. Why? Because lest I be full and deny thee, and say who is the Lord, right? Again, a lot of times in life, when you start getting up, you start forgetting about the Most High God, man. And we got to do a better job of making sure that when we're in the lead in our life, right? You may be in that now. The brother Obadiah said something earlier to the nature of, hey, look, if you say you ain't going through nothing, I'm thinking you lying or you're not really in the truth. I'm gonna say this. I can agree, but I will also say maybe you just overcame something, right? Maybe you just went through something and you overcame something, and now you in that smooth selling season, right?
Yep.
All the trials and tribulations that try to come about, you just kind of laugh them off because they're nothing to you now to overcome, right? Know how to protect the lead, right? Again, athletes, we don't start playing hard when we're ahead, right? especially after like a spiritual victory, you just overcame that temptation. Now ain't the time to, you know what I'm saying, forget that, hey, it's still a fight going on. You know, you gotta remember to stay in the moment, right? You gotta stay locked in at all time, right? Because we gotta guard against pride and laziness, you know, because those are things that leave us spiritually vulnerable. Being prideful, right? Now, how do we protect our lead, right? What is protecting the lead looks like when you in a game and you up by 20 points and you playing, like, just say you play basketball, you up by 20 points, right? What does protecting the lead look like? Well, let's see. Ephesians 6. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6 real quick. And let's start at verse number 11. All right. Let me share this tab. So we in Ephesians 6. Let's start at 10 and let's read through 13.
Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand.
Right, and having done all, to stand. The brother Azrael brought this up too. But again, man, this is a powerful precept because you got to know that you're going to get tried. And knowing that you're going to get tried, the only way you're going to be able to protect this lead, even after you overcome something, is by having that armor on. You know what I'm saying? You never take your armor off, not even for a minute, right? Not even for a minute. Who sung that song? What was it? Usher, when he was saying, "There goes my baby." Oh, yeah. Ooh, girl, look. But you got to think, man, that's how Satan looks at us. You know, Satan want to sing to us. He want to butter you up. He want to get you blushing. You know, he wants you to pretty much, you know, be easy, be tender, take your drawers off, right? That's what Satan wants you to do. But you got to have a type of mindset to, hey, when you hear those things, hey, man, you casting them down, right? And the only way you can do that is by continuing to keep that armor on. You might overcome something in the spirit, and then a day later, 2 days later, hell, it can even happen hours later. Hey, something come up. Or that spirit, that desire, that urge to do whatever, to lash out, to be angry, whatever, that spirit can come back hours later and be 10 times stronger than it was before. You got to keep that armor on because, again, the toughest teams that I've played in my athletic playing career were the teams that had a terrible record, right? I'm going to tell you why they were the tough ones. Because a lot of times those are trap games. And trap games means like you pretty much can just fall into the trap of overlooking your opponent and looking to the next opponent because of how bad their record may be. So sometimes you got a team's best foot when they were on their last leg, when they got nothing to lose. And that's what kind of you have to do when you're even in the moment. When you playing a game, even as a coach now, you be up by 20 and you got to start protecting that lead. That doesn't mean play not to lose, right? Because when you play not to lose, you oftentimes lose a lot. You start taking the ball out your best player's hands. You start, you know what I'm saying, just dribbling down the shot clock. You're not scoring no more. And all of a sudden they go down the court, hit a quick three. Now they in full court press, right? Now they running the traps. They get a steal and they shooting. And then you got players on the sideline, you know, they just laughing. They like, shoot, we up anyway. It don't matter. They ain't going to come back. But again, like the brother said earlier, when you're a patient runner, you got to think about all these things that can happen. You get out to a lead, hey, you got to think that people are going to try their hardest to catch up to you. So you got to protect that lead, right? You got to get to a certain point where you like, all right, look, let me downshift and let me just cruise it right now. And let me save some juice. Let me save some NOS for the end of this race because I know that they're going to give me their best leg, right? So you got to have on this full armor. You got to have on this full armor in order to protect that lead. Because again, you're not going to be able to overcome Satan by not having the tools to fight him. And again, these are spiritual tools, right? Now, speaking of Joshua, let's go to another precept, Joshua 1:8, because the brother Azrael mentioned Joshua earlier. So let's go to Joshua 1:8. Again, you protect the lead by putting on that armor, right? This is defensive training every single day. Defensive training every single day. Now, what does Joshua 1:8 say?
Because Joshua chapter 1 and verse 8, this book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy ways prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success.
Hey, look, this is what it's called staying in your playbook, man. Stay in your playbook, right? You should meditate in the law day and night. You got to stay in your playbook, right? When you in the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, well, I don't think the MLB has plays, right? So, but because I played baseball before and you really don't have plays, right? So let's think about the NFL for real. A lot of times what you'll see in the NFL is people get criticized for sometimes the quarterback having these lengthy play calls, right? The play call may seriously go like this. It may be like scatter to west, right, tight, F left, 372, Y stick, Z spot, right? Or you may have shift to river or F to front left, Dixie. You know what I'm saying? Like you have certain, I'm just saying all that to say you have certain terminologies in football that can get pretty confusing, but you have to know these things. When you're in the huddle and you got 60,000 people cheering for you, right? It gets loud in that stadium. You got to be able to hear the play call, know your assignment, and go out and execute it, right? The only way you can know what that play represents is if you stand in your playbook. Again, you got to stay in the playbook, right? We got to read this word often, as much as we possibly can, be in it, because that's what's going to help you get through. That's what's going to help you know, so when I'm faced with this, I have to do this. That's how you know. That's what built you up. That's a part of training, right? Being in that playbook, right? Constant meditation on scriptures is how we remember the plays that we can use to counter Satan. And if you're not in your playbook, you're going to have a hard time going to the scriptures to find something to look at, because you ain't going to know where to go. Why? Because you hadn't been studying your playbook, right? Just like, again, let me go to Second Chronicles real quick. I just got a couple more precepts. Salakia to the brother. Oh, man.
Are you good, King?
But let me go to Second Chronicles
Good.
32 real quick. Second Chronicles 32. Where do I want to start at for real? Let me see. So there was gathering much people. Let me see. I want to start at a certain verse. I was trying to find where he showed the king of Babylon, right? I was trying to find where he showed the king of Babylon those. I thought it was in Second Chronicles 32. Maybe I was overreading it, right? But pretty much, man, what I was looking for is, after their victory, man, Hezekiah pretty much just showed his treasures to the Babylonian envoys, and this pretty much, led to future captivity. And he kind of like, pretty much, he just kind of failed. How I was going to liken it is he failed to protect the lead God had given him because he forgot to be humble. A part of protecting the lead is being humble. Through humility, you have to sometimes win the game. Being humble, respecting your opponent, because again, it's an opponent for a reason. People think demons and devils out here aren't real, and sometimes that bothers me, because it's not to say that you have to have respect for those demons or devils. It's to say that you acknowledge that they're making a true and honest effort. Well, not necessarily honest, but they're making an effort to throw you off your game. And if you just out here being unaware, you out here living life like, well, shoot, it can't be me, then you're going to be somebody that's going to be subject to attacking. You're going to have a hard fall, right? I wanted to find that precept in specific, but I don't want to waste too much time looking for it, right? But again, just take the cautionary of King Hezekiah, man. Don't show people your riches, right? Do not be green and invite everybody into your house, right? The way you protect the lead sometimes is just by being humble, by keeping a low profile, right? Sometimes you just got to remember to get out your pride. Everybody ain't your friend. You got to know your opponent, right? Know your personnel, KYP. We say all these things as it goes into training. All of this is a part of training yourself, man. All this is a part of building yourself up in the spirit. You got to know your personnel, right? Now, we already read Sirach 2 and 5. So,
hey, King.
Yeah, go ahead.
That scripture you talking about Hezekiah, try 2 Kings 20 and verse 12 through 19. I looked it up.
Yeah. Let me see.
Talking about when he showed.
Oops. 2 Kings 20.
In verse 12 through 19. I think it started at 12, 20 and 12, and then.
You said 2 Kings 20, right?
Yeah.
Let me see. Nah, this ain't it. I mean, it's in. Oh, wait, 2 Kings 20, 12. Oh, okay, yeah. You're right. I was looking at verse 20, right?
Yeah, 2 Kings.
So pretty much, let's share this, right? So pretty much, real quick. Yeah, this is good. So pretty much, let's read verse 1. Let's read verse 1 quick. And we're gonna read verses 1, 3, we're gonna read 5 and 6. So 1, 3, 5, and 6. Let's read this in 2 Kings 20.
2 Kings chapter 20 and verse 1. He said, in those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And the prophet Isaiah, the son of Amos, came to him and said unto him, thus says the Lord, set thy house in order, for thou shalt die and not live.
Right. Hey, look, the angel came and told Hezekiah, you finna give up the ghost, brother. Now let's read.
Verse 3.
Yeah, Khan.
I beseech thee, O Lord, remember now how I walked before thee in truth and with a perfect heart, and have done that which is good in thy sight. And Hezekiah wept sore.
So like he read in verse 2, he started praying to the Lord, and he's telling pretty much, hey, Lord, remember me. I did these things, right? So let's read verse number 5.
Verse number 5, turn again and tell Hezekiah, the captain of my people, thus says the Lord, the God of David, thy father, I have heard thy prayer, I have seen thy tears. Behold, I will heal thee on the 3rd day. Thou shalt go up unto the house of the Lord.
Now let's read verse 6.
Verse 6, and I will add unto thy days 15 years, and I will deliver thee and this city out of the hand of the king of Assyria. And I will defend this city for my own sake and for my servant David's sake.
Right, man. So the Lord pretty much gave Hezekiah an additional 15 years, right? So you can see Hezekiah overcoming the adversity that was set before him through prayer. Now, the angel of the Lord could have told him that, and he could have just wept sore and not said anything, not prayed, and he could have just accepted his fate, right? Or he could have made haste and argued against God, or went and did something that he wasn't supposed to do. But what he did in that moment was that he prayed, right? He counterpunched the Lord. Now, I'm not saying that he counterpunched the Lord because that was the Lord's plan for him. However, you can see that in certain situations, even when you're faced with, I guess you could say, throwing in the towel, right? Your trainer in your corner might be saying, look, I'm about to finna throw in the towel. You getting pretty beat up. You didn't had a good career, but hey, look, it's time to throw in the towel. And you might say, hey, look, you don't remember how those late nights when I was up training, I live for moments like this. And then boom, you get back in the ring and then you win by knockout, right? And you go on to have a longer, successful career. Now, Hezekiah just overcame that adversity. Now look what he did. Let's start at verse 12, and now let's look what he did.
Verse 12. At that time, Bera the Bubba, how you pronounce that?
I would say Beryl Doc Baladan. Beryl Doc Aldeban, something like that.
him, right? The son of Baladan, the king of Babylon, sent letters and a present unto Hezekiah, for he had heard that Hezekiah had been sick.
Right. Again, remember when it goes back into the law, Deuteronomy 16 and 19. Neither take gifts. The king of Babylon sent a present unto Hezekiah. The Lord told us not to take gifts. Again, man, if you in your playbook a little more, you'll remember stuff like this, right? Hezekiah, in my opinion, he should have went back to the playbook and said, hold on, let me not take a gift, because what does a gift do? It's going to destroy my eyes. It's going to pervert my words, right? Let me read this real quick, and I'll read it in Deuteronomy 16 and 19, right? Deuteronomy 16 and 19. Just for the viewer's sake, so you can know and add this to your playbook. Somebody wants to give you a gift, butter you up. You know they the ops per se, but you just kind of take it anyway, right? What does it say? Thou shalt not rest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift. Why not? For a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous. So Hezekiah taking that gift kind of blinded his eyes a little bit to what could have happened. But you got to be ready for that. Again, Satan wants to attack you where you're the most vulnerable. And if you're somebody that loves gifts, then you got to make sure that you're not taking gifts from the enemy, right? Because why? The enemy is going to use that gift to overcome you and to overthrow you. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. Let's read verse 13.
Verse 13. And Hezekiah hearkened unto them and showed them all the house of his precious things, the silver and the gold and the spices and the precious ointment and all the house of his armor. Excuse me, and all that was found in his treasures. There was nothing in his house, nor in all his dominion that Hezekiah showed them not.
Right. There was nothing that Hezekiah didn't show him, man. He giving them the whole rundown, like MTV Cribs, man. Now let's read verse number 14.
Verse 14. Then came Isaiah the prophet unto King Hezekiah and said unto him, what said these men, and from whence came they unto thee? And Hezekiah said, they are come from a far country, even from Babylon.
Keep reading.
And he said, what have they seen in thy house? And Hezekiah answered, all the things that are in my house have they seen. There is nothing among my treasures that I have not showed them.
Right. Man, look, training yourself. Everybody can't see what you got, man. Cast not your pearls before the swine. Everybody cannot see what you have. If you give the other coach your playbook, you give him your counter punches, you give him the other coach your screens, your blocking assignments. Expect for you to have a long game and expect for it to be a long bus ride home if it's an away game, right? You cannot give the enemy any ammunition. You cannot allow them to see the glory that the Lord has given unto you. Why? Because when you do, you're vulnerable now. They can come in and they can ransack you. They can come in and they can sing that song, walk in your trap, take over your trap. Long live Bankroll Fresh. But they'll come and do that. Go ahead, King.
No, I was just saying the song you were saying.
Con. So be wise, man. Train yourself. Don't be green, bro. Everybody should not be able to come into your house and look at your goodly possessions. And if you are somebody that's overly friendly like that, stay away from me. Stay away from me. But if you are overly friendly like that, for real, check yourself. Check yourself and get that in under order, right? Under subjection, because you're going to be very vulnerable and subject to attack if you just let anything inside of you, right? That's even in the sexual sense for like women and men. Men, if you're a whoremonger, man, you just got all these spirits attached to you. Same thing with women. Women, you let every man you see inside of you. You got to be, you vulnerable for being a cesspool of demons, right? You're not even spiritually healthy, right? You could be physically healthy. You may have a lot of partners and not have any type of disease, right? But you could just still be spiritually unhealthy, right? Something that should not be inhabited. So you got to just mind yourself, right? But let's keep reading. Let's go to verse 16 through 19.
Verse 16. And Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the words of the Lord. Behold, the days come that all that is in thy house and that which thy fathers have laid up in store until this day shall be carried into Babylon. Nothing shall be left, says the Lord. And of thy sons that shall issue issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away. They shall be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon. Then said Hezekiah to Isaiah, good is the word of the Lord which thou hast spoken. And he said, it is not good if peace and truth be in my days.
Right, man. So pretty much summing it up, dog. Hezekiah pretty much he set his people up to fail. Why? Because you let people in and then they make you vulnerable, right? The brother had put it in the thing, 2 Kings 20:13. I didn't even see it. But yeah, you make yourself vulnerable, man, and subject to attack. But this is all a part of training, right? This goes into protecting the lead. You got to protect the lead, right? And you got to protect the lead through being humble and also being aware and also being prudent. Again, if Hezekiah would foresee that stuff like this can happen, then he would have never been in that situation, because he would have understood that if I let these people in here, they could probably come back and try to rob us. It's the same thing when you have a nice house, you have a nice car, right? You're not going to be riding around openly being vulnerable as rappers, right? Rappers that have gotten killed over the last couple of years, a lot of them had deaths because their location was made known, right? Whether it was them themselves or whether it was the people they were with, either way it goes, you got to know certain things can happen. So you got to protect yourself at all costs. This is a part of training, protecting the lead, right? This is building yourself up in the spirit. The Lord probably gave you a spiritual victory. He probably added more years to your life. He probably helped you overcome certain, I guess you could say, vices, right? But you still got to remind yourself to protect that lead, because those things can come back, right? You can get out to a far lead and those things can catch back up with you. But that's why you have to be a patient runner, enduring to the end. And let's close it out with this, man, because I've been quoting it all day. All right. Well, I got two more precepts. We're gonna close it out with these two, right? Wait a minute. Hold on. 2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 9. Let me see. Nah, this ain't it. This ain't it at all. Let me see. Is it 9 or is it 10?
You tell me what you look for.
Dang, I thought I hate when I be thinking I'm right going to a precept and then I be wrong. Let me see. Maybe it is
there's no temptation.
No, not even that. That's 1 Corinthians 10. But it's pretty much talking about a fight. Well, I guess this is 1 Corinthians 9. I just thought it read differently for some reason. But I guess we can go back to 1 Corinthians 9, right? Let's go to 9 and let's start at verse 26, right? Let's go to verse 26.
Verse 26. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly, so fight I not as one that beateth the air.
Right, you fight, but not as one that just beateth the air, because at the end of the day, man, we not just fighting nothing, right? You're not just swinging and missing, right? You're fighting with intention. You're fighting with purpose, right? This is a part of training yourself up to be a great man or woman in the faith. You got to build yourself up. You got to fight and you got to hit your target. We don't do attempts over here. I know they say it in the wicked sense in the world, but over here, you don't need to do attempts. You see a demon, you got to lay it down quickly, expeditiously, flee from it, right? Because if you don't, it's going to take every opportunity it can to put you on your back, to have you on the ground stretched out. And we don't want that, right? So we don't fight as one that beat the air, man. We don't do attempts. But let's read verse 27.
But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway.
Yeah, don't be like what it says in Sirach 37:19 is there's one that is wise and teacheth many, yet is unprofitable unto himself. It might be 39:16 or 17, whichever, right? But nonetheless, man, again, you run this race for you too. You don't want to be the Israelite brother or sister that sits up here and gives mighty counsel, right? And you doing all this stuff, but at the same time, you're yourself struggling, right? You don't want to give the mighty counsel, but then be the person that don't get the kingdom. You shouldn't be content. Well, at least they got the kingdom. At least they got nah, you should want it for yourself, right? But that's why, again, but I keep under my body and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I preach to others, I myself should be a castaway. You shouldn't want to be a castaway on your own right. All this training and stuff that you're doing, you should want to use it for you. You shouldn't want to be a coach, right? Let me put it like this. Again, in a spiritual sense, as a coach, you should want to coach people because you know that the same things that you're training your players or you're training your athletes for, it can and will happen to you, right? So you just got to be ready for that. You know, you got to be ready for that. And that's why, again, this is talking about training, being able to get to the point where your body is built up enough to have a situation like the brother Azrael was going into on Friday, getting knocked down and getting back up. The only way you can get to that point of learning how to get back up, which is being resilient, is through training. Right? So let's go to Matthew 24 and let's go to verse 13 and let's shut it down here, right? Let's read this in Matthew 24 and 13.
Matthew chapter 24 and verse 13. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved.
Right, man. He that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. At the end of the day, when you're training, keep in mind that it's about enduring. Endurance is the biggest part of training. If you're not in shape, everything else doesn't matter. So you got to be able and willing to endure these things. With endurance, it comes, well, I put it like this. The reason that you have to endure is because you got to have some type of prudence. I think prudence is the first thing, in my opinion. Prudence is the first thing. You got to foresee that these things are going to happen. That's why it says in Sirach, hey, if you come to serve the Lord, prepare your soul for temptation. Make thy heart aright and constantly endure, and make not haste in the time of trouble. So when you're prudent and you know and foresee that these things can and will happen, that's when you know how to build yourself up accordingly, right? But the one thing that you should want to have the most is the spirit of endurance, man. You got to be willing to ride the long ride, you know. You got to be willing to be a long time lover, right? And that's not in the folly sense. I'm saying that in the sense of you got to be ready to commit yourself to knowing why you love the Lord, showing the Lord why you love him each and every day, even when you feel like he's not dealing with you. Because you're going to have moments like that in this walk. You're going to feel like the Lord can't be dealing with me, man. I'm going through it too much. Am I going off? And that's when you start thinking about the things that you could have done better, the things that probably caused this mistake, and then you learn from it, right? And that's a part of watching film. As well as you study your opponent, always study yourself. Go back and think about the times where you was in a certain situation before. Now that you got the knowledge of learning how to train yourself, the knowledge of the commandments, think about what you can do moving forward to help you out when that situation comes up again, you know? But hey, I'm just a worm, man, you know, through the spirit and power of the Most High. I hope this lesson was edifying. If it wasn't, you know, hey, pass it to somebody else because it may be for them. But again, this is called training camp, learning how to build yourself up in the spirit, man. You're going to go through things in this life, but again, it's he that endures to the end is the one that's going to be saved. Don't make haste when things get hard. Don't be ready to curse God, and don't be ready to fall out this walk. Don't be ready to get rich quick. Sometimes you just got to be broke, and you just got to be broke for a long time. I tell my wife all the time, hey, look, we don't know how long the Lord sets things up for people to go through stuff. You just got to be willing to ride that ride until them wheels fall off. And once them wheels fall off, then you got to be ready to grab the wheels and put them back on. And if the Lord still wants you to be in that situation, even after those wheels fall off, so be it, man. That's his will. But you just got to be strong and of good courage going through these things, right? But Brother Obadiah, you got anything to add?
Come on, man. Hey, mighty lesson, man. It's definitely a spirit booster. I think everybody, you know, it comes a time, you know, everybody need to hear this. You know, you can't never hear it enough. Get some exhortation. Just keep going, keep enduring. There ain't no sense turning back now. The kingdom already this close. We seeing prophecies taking place. We seeing World War III on the rise, right? We seeing martial law on the rise. So ain't no sense of giving up, going back into the world. You might well just put your foot to the plow. Keep going.
Right. Put your hand to the plow, man. Don't turn back. At the end of the day, man, hey, it's the Lord's plan. We just got to execute it. but you got to do it to the best of your abilities. And the only way you could do that is through training, right? Much fasting, much prayer. But Most High willing, you all were edified. All praise, glory, and honor be to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Shalom.